Good morning, and welcome back to Hansford County Heritage Journeys Through Time. Hope everyone had a Merry Christmas, and we're creeping up on a new year in 2024. Today, I'm going to post a few today, so this is going to be great. First one's James Cunningham, former superintendent of Spearman ISD. What a fantastic personality this man is. I went to school across the creek in Groover, so I never knew him. This interview took place in 1996. Interesting, this guy has a very interesting point of view on school management. If we were to compare it against, kind of how, schools have modernized over times with technology and everything, it's just interesting to listen, to someone where, someone my age or older was managing school, over 30 years ago as a superintendent, and what they went through. And one thing I'll say about this guy is he knew his purpose in life. He knew what God put him on the earth for, and that was, to be an administrator here at Spearman ISD, and you'll get to see why as you listen to it. But he grew up and went to Sam Norwood High School. He's also a veteran. Without further ado, you'll enjoy this, Mr. James Cunningham. Have a good day.
We welcome you to Hansford Information on KRDF, and here with today's guest, your hostess, Carolyn Cummings.
This is another in our series of what we're calling Hansford Memories. Today is May 16th, 1996, and we have with us former Spearman ISD Superintendent James Cunningham. If I can get my mouth working this morning. Good morning, James.
Good morning.
And we were talking right before we went on the air and showing annuals. So this may prove to be a very interesting conversation. Former Spearman students, beware. He's got annuals here. Okay, we'll be right back after a quick message.
When swimmer Tom Dolan broke the world's record for the 400-meter individual medley and was named NCAA Swimmer of the Year, he had something none of the other world-class athletes competing against him had. He had asthma. Thanks to the education and research programs funded by the American Lung Association, people like Tom with serious lung disease are often able to dive in and enjoy life to the fullest. Tom has a good chance in the 96 games. Help others have an equally good chance in life. Support the American Lung Association. Call 800-LUNG-USA. Because, as Tom says,
when you can't breathe, nothing else matters.
This message is brought to you by the American Lung Association of Texas.
Welcome back to Hansford Information, and as I said before we went off the air there for a minute, we're doing a Hansford Memory with James Cunningham, former Spearman ISD Superintendent. James, when did you first take on the position of Superintendent here in Spearman, and where did you originally come from?
I became the Superintendent of Schools at Spearman ISD on August 1, 1968. Of course, as George and Dwayne kind of let me know occasionally during the fall especially, I grew up at Sam Norwood. They always read the Sam Norwood six-man football score. So I grew up at Sam Norwood. I graduated from Sam Norwood High School in the middle of World War II. I had the opportunity to go to college a year before I was required to go into service, because I graduated from high school when I was 16. And I went to college a year, and then I went into service and served, and then came back and finished my college work at Tech. And then I taught in the veterans school at Wellington a year. I graduated from college in 1950, and I taught in the veterans school at Wellington for a year before Faye graduated. My wife graduated in 1951, and we married in the summer of 1951, and received a position at the Whiteface ISD school between west of Lubbock, between Levelland and Morton, and we taught there 17 years, or in that system 17 years, and then we came to Spearman in 1968 and served in the Spearman School for 17 years.
We were talking about board members and such before we went on the air, and like I said, you have the annuals. Why don't you start just reminiscing about some of those students and some of those board members and memories that you have of those people?
The school board that was here when I became the superintendent of school consisted of Max Baggerly as president of the board, R.L. McClellan was vice president of the board, Marvin Jones was secretary of the board. Then the other members were Joel Lackey and Herschel Jones and Ira Harbor and Chalmers Porter. And it's strange, I guess, in a way, but I think that of the 28 years I've lived in Spearman, that all of the school board members that were members of the board while I was superintendent of schools are still living. Every one of them, I think. I can't recall one that's passed away.
That's great. I
Yeah.
mean, we've had quite a number of people pass away in the last couple of weeks, and I think we're all kind of a little shell-shocked right now, and that is a feat also. What year did you retire from the school system?
1985.
1985. When you first came, about what size of school system did we have?
Well, when I came in 1968, the school system was still on the growth. It was growing rather rapidly. I think the first year we only had about 50 some odd graduates, and then we jumped to the next year to, I believe, 81, and then we got up to around, we hung from the high 80s to the low 90s as graduates for several years. And there was a period of time in there in the middle 70s when we had about 1,350 students in school here.
That was from first grade or
Yes,
kindergarten all the way
yes,
through?
But we had about 1,350 students. We had almost 400 students in high school. We would have over 100 students that would finish the 8th grade, and then we would have around 90 that would graduate.
And that's, of course, I come from a very large town, and my graduating class was 367. My class was larger than the whole school here.
Yes.
Do you think that's a benefit, to have a small class?
I don't know. I really don't. Of course, it's a benefit socially to have a small class because you learn to know all the people in the class better. You probably didn't even know all the people in your graduating class, period.
I knew faces, really.
But I really don't know. I think that we in small communities, when I say small, I'm referring to people, to schools our size, that I think we're blessed in that we have a closer relationship with everyone in the community and always have had, and I think always will have.
Well, let's give some more history of those years. Somewhere along in those years, we had a number of outstanding basketball teams.
Yes.
A big band.
Yes.
What else was going on? Because I wasn't around in those days.
We had, in those years, we were blessed in that we had, not just those years, we're still blessed in that we have some outstanding people, outstanding students. But during those times back in the early 70s, late 60s and early 70s, see, we had a stretch there after I came to Spearman. We went 5 years that we played for the state championship. I'm not talking about the state tournament. I mean the state championship game every year for 5 years. And we won it twice. We lost it twice. And no, we won it 3 times, I guess. And lost twice. But nevertheless, we had some outstanding athletic teams then. We had some good football teams. Of course, it was later on in the 70s when we went to the state championship game in football. But maybe more importantly, we had then some young people that were outstanding in academic contest in the UIL. we won a lot of state championships in speech areas during those late 60s and early 70s years. We had a lot of really, really outstanding people, and we had probably the best coach for those speech events at that time that I have ever seen, a lady, June Porter. She was absolutely fabulous in working with young people in the academic areas of UIL, and they won a lot of state championships. Teresa Kirk, if you're listening, Teresa was a state champion and an outstanding, really outstanding in UIL academic events, speech events, and others that we have. But she comes to mind because I see Teresa every day. But we went there principally during the 70s. I think we either had 9 or 10 years that we had at least one state champion in something every year. So we've had outstanding students, we've had outstanding teachers, we've had outstanding school boards, we've had people that were diligent in serving on the school board through the years, and an outstanding community in that our community still expects our students to be quality people. I always took pride when I was superintendent of schools in telling other school-related people around our area that one thing that made me proudest about our school and our community was when we had a young person to graduate from high school, that I did not have to worry as superintendent of schools about whether or not those young people could participate and could compete and could pass at any college or university they wanted to go to. Anywhere. Doesn't make any difference. They could make it. They could do a fine job. And we have lots of people that have proven that. We have doctors and lawyers and PhDs and MDs in all of these areas, from Rice and the University of Texas and all the colleges and universities, from the Air Force Academy and, everywhere. And so that's never been a problem. And that's not so in lots of communities.
That's right, it isn't.
We take some of these things for granted. Our people that are natives of Spearman are spoiled in that they assume that we are a typical small town community and school system, in that all school systems and all communities are like ours. And that's not so.
No, it isn't.
It's not so. We're certainly not typical.
Well, I know that we've been working on the senior profiles, and reflected in those senior profiles, you'll have your overall thoughts of Spearman High School and what would you change and this, that, and the other. And a lot of times the kids will say, I think I've got the best foundation I could get. I'm ready to go on to the next steps. And a lot of them have thanked those teachers. And I think that's because a lot of times there's not that respect there that we find in a small community.
That's part of the value of being in a small community, I think. And we have had, and still have, but again, I reflect back that when I was a school superintendent, we had outstanding teachers in the critical areas. Now, that's probably not fair to a lot of teachers, but when we say the critical areas, we're talking about the languages and the English and the math and the sciences to be able to pass in college. Of course, it's important to have the other things also, but for be it right or wrong, those areas have always been considered your critical areas in order to make it in college.
I think they refer to them as core subjects, yes, or something like
that. But anyway, I was a school superintendent for 22 years, and I've said many times, the 17 years at Spearman and 5 years at Whiteface, that during that time I was blessed in having outstanding school boards and outstanding individual on school boards that understood and knew what in school operation was all about, to set the policies, to make the policies, and then say, you people implement the policies. You know, that's what y'all's job is to run the school, and ours is to see that you run it according to our policies that we've implemented. And the Lord blessed me in having outstanding school boards for those 22 years. I appreciate that, guys.
That's a good thought. James, let's take a real quick break and then come back and see if you can come up with some stories. And I bet you've got a lot of them on some of these ex-students and maybe where they're at, and even ex-teachers, okay?
Okay.
We'll be back right after this message.
Before you listen to this radio commercial, take off all your clothes. I'll wait. Okay, everything off? Good. Now, go and look at yourself in a mirror, front and back. Be thorough. Then come back. Oh, back already? Well, when you looked in the mirror, did you notice anything weird? How about your moles or freckles? Have they changed in shape or colour? Or do you see a new blemish that you didn't have before? Is it larger than a quarter inch or multicoloured? Is it irregular in shape? If so, you may have melanoma or another form of skin cancer. Left alone, melanoma will spread throughout your body and eventually kill you. That's why you should examine yourself regularly. And if you have any questions, see a dermatologist. Melanoma can be cured if caught early. Okay, you can put your clothes back on now. I won't look. This message brought to you by the American Academy of Dermatology.
Welcome back to Hansford Information, and we're doing Hansford Memories with James Cunningham, former Spearman ISD school superintendent, from 68 through 85.
Correct.
Okay, let's reminisce about some of the interesting things that have happened over the years. And like I warned you all, he's got yearbooks here.
Well, one thing, of course, Faye, I still have a hard time keeping calling her Faye Palmer. Faye Holt was on last week, or earlier this week. Anyway, a few days ago. And Faye was my secretary the first year I was here. Probably most of you don't remember that. Faye was the secretary for the superintendent when I came here, and she stayed for a year before she came back and worked here at the radio station. And then Wadena Kemper was my secretary for the rest of the time that I was the school superintendent. Well, there were some funny things that happened. There's one guy here in town that when I sometimes in the Lions Club, I have to call him down because of an incident that he did in the fall of 1979. He and another guy. We had, and I'll not call any names. You don't have to worry.
We'll protect the guilty. Is that what you're saying?
But this was one of the funny things that happened. We had some writing on the west wall of the band hall one morning. And I came to the office, and Mr. McKay and the police chief and several were out there. And so we went out and we were looking at this writing on the wall, spray painting, if you please. And we were talking about it, and the police chief, we were all discussing the spray painting, and as I recall, this was in red, but I'm not sure of that. And, you know, there were some things, you know, said about perhaps that it came from across the creek. And finally, you know, I'm not very tall, and I said, you know, I reached up and I said, hey, this was pretty tall guy that did this. And the police chief said, I know who did it. I saw those two guys driving around here in town last night. I'll go get them. And he did. And their fathers probably threatened them with mayhem, you know, concerning that. And those fathers, we didn't do it. The fathers required them to go hire a sandblaster.
Oh, heavens.
To take that paint off of the wall. You remember that, Cindy?
Yes, I do. Come on in, Cindy. I told you to come on back.
And I have a picture here in one of the annuals of an imposter, I think. It says that it's Cindy Deer.
I told you I was glad this wasn't television.
But we had a lot of funny things that happened during the years. I think Billy Miller still has a picture that he took of me down at the Lubbock Coliseum that spring of 1969, I believe that was, when we were playing in the regional basketball tournament. And we had a call that was not in our favor. And he has a picture of me going over the rail at the Coliseum to have a little conflab with some officials. And he shows that to me occasionally. Very embarrassing.
He has to keep you in line, James.
And, that's...
We need that one for the celebration. Billy, are you out there listening?
But Billy still has that picture, and he shows that occasionally.
Adult participation in sports, huh?
True. But we had some good times then, and we had some good programs, didn't we, Sandy?
We really did. And when we were looking back, we were talking about our 20-year class reunion, here too long ago. We have a lot of people that I went to school with that are still here in Spearman. They raised
That's
their
one of the
families
advantages
here.
that we have here in Spearman that a lot of the small communities don't have, is we have a lot of the people that have graduated from Spearman High School in the last 25 years that still live here.
We really do. My grandmother graduated from Spearman High School, and I don't know if it was the first graduating class, but it was close to one of the first graduating classes. My mother graduated from here. I did, and so did my daughter and my kids. So there's like 4 or 5 generations. Well, it was Darlene Howe and Pat Deere and myself and Brandy Snyder. And then, so there's several generations right there of people who have gone to school at Spearman and have graduated from Spearman High School.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about this for the last week. Cindy and I have. We received a book in, and we've had the biggest time with it because the author was Glover and Jamie Davis, and it's a book of poetry. Well, George couldn't remember who this person was, not under that name. And I
James probably doesn't either.
Yeah, he does.
Donnie.
You know who it is? Yeah, Donnie Davis.
Donnie Davis. And, of course, James is like the rest of us, as amazed that he's written poetry. And we're having the best time with this because he's going to be here next Wednesday. And are you going to be down at the library for that one?
Probably. I've only been on the library board now for 26 years.
Well, there's some wonderful poems in there about Spearman, and even though these people aren't living in Spearman like Cindy and her parents and grandparents are, they still care about this town, and enough to let the world know how they feel about it.
I made it a practice for a number of years to, when students would graduate and go to college, and for as many as I could, and a lot of kids, a lot of young people, I still call them kids, but a lot of young people would come back, and I would ask them about strengths and weaknesses of our program. And we used a lot of that through the years in trying to make changes in our curriculum and those kind of changes that would be quality for people to go to college. And they didn't mind doing that. They'd say, hey, these are strengths and these are weaknesses, and they knew that was not a criticism of a person, a teacher, or anyone in that nature, but was their compliment on the total overall program, or a suggestion for changes in total overall programs. And we use those things. Some of the changes, I guess, the biggest changes that have been that have come through the years is probably in discipline.
That's a tough one anytime.
Yeah, it is, and I have empathy for the people in the school programs now, the school systems, and that they, irregardless of if parents are willing for children to be disciplined in any severe manner, you can't do that anymore. So I suppose probably, Kenneth McKay would have a hard time being a high school principal today.
Cindy went through the hallway laughing. There again, I didn't know this man, but I've heard some stories about this man.
He would have a very difficult time being a high school principal today. Kenneth, he retired as the superintendent of schools at Decatur. He lives at Decatur now. But he was the high school principal for, I believe, 7 years when I first came here, from 68 to 75 or something like that. But nevertheless, that's probably one of the biggest changes that has come about through the years is discipline measures that are permitted by the courts in the school system.
Well, not only in the school system, but as parents.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, used to, we could spank our children and we wouldn't have to worry about it. Now, if we spank our children, we wonder if we're going to be turned in for it.
And you will.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of horning in here. James is bringing up all these old memories and people. He was talking about Mr. McKay. Mr. McKay was, I mean, we knew what we could and could not do.
There were no gray hats.
No,
there were black hats and white hats.
That's right. And if you had the black hat on, you got it. But, and I got it. But I will say this, we had great respect for that man, and we still do. And we have stories that we've told on him, but I actually liked him. I mean, but we had respect for Mr. McKay. And I think that's some of the things that we don't see a whole lot of. But, you knew what you could and could not do with him, and you didn't do it.
And there was no leeway.
No.
If you tried
talking him out of it.
Evidently, if you tried some of the things that you knew you weren't supposed to do,
you suffered the consequences.
For a couple of days.
At least.
And in school administration, of course, there were some times, I guess, that things happened that were funny and are unusual or different or those kind of things. But one of the things that I remember most probably is Jim Davis. When Jim Davis was the school board president, many times, I guess I was negligent in that I would bring things up at school board meetings that I wanted them to take care of, them being the school board, so that it would take the monkey off of me. And I would lay these things out to the school board, and they would listen politely. And finally, when I would get through, they'd talk about it maybe a short time, and Jim would invariably say, "We believe that this is an administrative problem, and you handle it."
Give the ball
End of story.
Give the ball back to Leroy.
That's and you look back on some of those things that really were rather insignificant, I guess, in that I don't have any, I couldn't relate any of the things that happened. I just remember the outcome. And I think that this was one of the things that I appreciate when I talk about the school boards during all those years, that I appreciate most. They said, here are the guidelines to go by for the school. You administrate them. You be the administrator. You follow those, and you do these things. And if you get out of line, then we'll tell you about it. And they did. But just like Kenneth did when the students got out of line. But that's the things that I look back and really appreciate most.
Well, you related a story about a student. You were golfing with him, and at the time he was a student, he was totally different than he is now. You want to tell us about that?
Well, this is one of our young men that graduated about 15, 18 years ago.
76? 77?
Mm-hmm. And lives at Morse. And I was playing golf with this was Lonnie Clemens. And we were visiting, and he happened to be riding with me, and his son and Eddie were on the other cart, and we were visiting, and he's on the school board at Morse, and Lonnie took a long time to mature. But this is the thing that happened that you really appreciate about young people. When we were riding the other day, I said something about him being on the school board at Morse, and he said yes. He said every person at some time in their life should be required to serve on a school board so that they'll find out what really goes on in a community. And I guess that I probably almost fell out of the cart. But you know, you really appreciate young people when they come to that realization.
Those are the things that make it all worthwhile.
Yeah, they really are.
All the times you
know.
wanted to pull your hair out and
Yeah.
whatever.
Mm-hmm. Really are. But I have had people since I retired. I've been retired 11 years, and people around the country. In fact, we had 2 meetings in Amarillo yesterday, and one guy asked me, he said, "You still living in Spearman?" I said, "Yeah." And I had people when I retired. We still have a farm down in Collingsworth County, and they asked, "You know, you're going to retire down that farm?" I said, "You got to be kidding." That's the reason I went to school for about 25 years after I got out of high school to get away from that farm. I don't want to go to that farm. That was not my purpose in life. You know, people don't understand why I would want to live in Spearman after being a superintendent of schools here for a number of years and still living here and so forth. I love it. This is the place where I want to live. I don't have to live at Spearman, but this is where I want to live. And I'm going to live here because it's a great community.
You're going to hire him for the Chamber of Commerce?
He's hired.
He's hired right now.
But, I mean, it's just that simple. We have a good time. We're active in our church. We have a good church situation. I've served over on all the boards and all that kind of stuff in town. I still serve on some of them. I even still serve on a state UIL committee. Now, I'm on an appeals committee for the state UIL program. That we hear appeals that come to the state level from individuals that disagree with rulings that have been made by the district UIL committee. So,
I didn't know you could even do that. I thought, it was all final.
No, it's not. You can appeal to the state committee, and you come and you come
Whether
and
it's or not.
you come and talk to our group.
Okay. Well, we're actually out of time.
I understand.
Is there one last parting thought you would like to convey to everyone?
Hang in there.
Hang in there. Okay. And for all the former students, I'd like to say thank you.
I would too.
For
You're
all
a
your
great bunch.
For all your years of service, because I've heard many, many endearing stories about you, and your students loved you.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
We've been visiting this morning with James Cunningham, former superintendent of Spearman ISD, in one of our Hansford memories, and we thank you for listening.